As a matter of fact, on Saturday, I was speaking to some people in the private equity world, and they needed some construction advice. I said, you need to speak to my friend. So I actually gave him your number.
Yeah.
That's at the point. And I don't recommend everyone, especially after all the
everything
the
that
bad moments that we've gone through, especially in the construction world.
So welcome to the Set Apart Podcast. We have a very special guest today. We have Dr. Dieguez. He is a friend of ours and also a client. And he runs right now a cardiology center in Hialeah called Vascardio. It's going under major renovations, and there's a lot of things happening in his practice, a lot of things happening in his life. And so we thank him for being on the show. Something that we really want to go through is, what got you into being in cardiology. What can we do to have a healthier heart in this city, especially considering all the foods and the things that we drink? And then what got you into wanting to do an ambulatory surgical center, ASC, and why John Bell? So we're very happy to have you on.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here as one of the first guests in your podcast. And I as soon as you spoke to me about it, I said definitely I'll jump on. We can educate the community, and on top of that, to support a corporation, a construction, a company that you're part owner, you're the owner, and that I think is giving quality service and a quality. Again, before we start about me, I want to speak about you. I've had experiences in the construction world. Being a physician, unfortunately, It's kind of like a car that is going 55, 60, 70 miles an hour and hits the wall and all of a sudden wakes up and says, wait, this is not medicine, this is construction. Yeah. So I had a lot of bad experiences and good experiences too, but a few bad experiences starting my office and my clinic, where I had to use two construction companies and contractors. And the job, luckily, the second contractor fixed, the situation that had happened with the first contractor. But still, I didn't feel that there was that attention to detail that I discovered bringing you folks on. And I'm going to tell you what I mean. I remember the first 2 weeks, just in the manner you presented the layout on how the project was going to be, first of all, enacted and brought about. It just impressed me. And then when I saw you starting to bring all the workers on board and everybody just, bringing up that structure, I said, wow, these people are the real deal. And being as young as you are, you're hungry, and that's important because the older we get, the more we stagnate, and the more your belly starts growing bigger because you've been able to feed off the good food for a while. But the good thing is that you're in a great spot. You've got great leadership. You've got great people around you, making you one of the I would say probably the best general contracting and construction companies here in South Florida. And I recommend you folks to everybody that have. As a matter of fact, on Saturday I was speaking to some people in the private equity world, and they needed some construction advice. I said, you need to speak to my friend. So I actually gave him your number. Yeah. That's at the point. And I don't recommend everyone, especially after all the
everything
the bad moments that we've gone through, especially in the construction world. I'll give you a quick bite here. I'll never forget walking in, and the construction world is difficult because there's so many permits and so many things, and it's so unlike our world, my world. You wait around for something to happen, or just wait around, and people die in my field. If you don't take care of things quickly. Being a cardiologist, then things happen. And that's not necessarily the case in the construction world. You have to wait for permits. We'll have a meeting next week, and that meeting usually doesn't work out. You have to go to the city, get permits, stand in front of City Hall, be able to, have all these special counselors and commissioners vote on whether you are able to or not able to just make sure that the parking is intact for you to continue. I never even knew you needed so much parking to be able to construct a building. That's how ignorant I was to your world. Yeah. Luckily, I've caught up a little bit. You've helped me significantly. But to bring back the point to what we spoke initially about, continue what you're doing. Continue with the seriousness and the methodical approach that you take in giving and offering the services that you do, and you're gonna see how greatness follows you. Right, I had a cardiologist once who told me, as physicians, we're well reimbursed, although in recent times we haven't been because that's another story, but. Don't do it for anything else but treating the patients. And then eventually, word will spread, and you won't have to worry about you making a good living or anything like that. So I tell you the same in your world. Just make sure you bring about quality work, and then everything else will follow.
We appreciate it. And, all those words mean a lot to me because, you've gone through something twice, like you said, and it's kind of like dating somebody that has had their heart broken, you know, and they appreciate you a little bit more, to be honest with you.
Excellent analogy.
So we really enjoy you having as a client because you understand our value and you understand, but we also understand who you are as a client that understands that because we also have clients that unfortunately haven't gone through this process that we're also trying to guide through. So it's very difficult sometimes, but I think we make a great team.
Oh yeah. I told you from here on out, any project I do, you're gonna be involved. So
all we need is money.
Right. That's all we need. Fortunately, but hopefully that'll come. With good work comes all that.
Yeah. What got you into wanting to start an ASC and explain to the viewers what's so revolutionary about an ambulatory surgical center? For cardiology, why do you even need that?
Well, to start the whole surgical center debate, I think it would be great to kind of have all the people on the podcast know who I am. Perfect. And what I'm about. I can safely tell you that I was born to become a physician. I knew at 6-7 years of age that I wanted to be a doctor.
Wow.
I wanted to take care of everybody. Luckily, I had parents who supported every step of the way. My father's a physician, and he would take me back here in South Florida in the early 80s. He would take me to Pan American Hospital, which was right by the airport, right on 57th and I think
7th.
Flagler and 7th.
Yeah.
And I would go and round with him. He was a director of a clerkship program there for medical students.
Wow.
And then.
Hold on. What did that mean to you, by the way? Like.
Oh, I mean that meant everything. I started getting involved and mentally starting to become aware significantly of what it meant to be in a setting of a hospital, and what maybe it meant to be a physician. What a difference you would make in people's lives. I remember all these patients and family members thanking my father, thanking his residents and students for what they had done. And I as an individual, I always think, and I'm a scientist and I'm an open-minded scientist. I think you come with all this DNA and genetic material to be able to do certain things in this world. And I think for myself, I believe that I came with this role in mind to treat and to help people in this world. So when I saw the gratification that these students had for just for making a difference in a lot of these people. I said, this is what I really. It kind of was stamped it on me. You know, I stamped that imprint was within me after that.
But was that in a medical or was that straight cardiology? Because
No, it was medical. No, it was just these were the introductory phases of thinking that I was likely going to want to be in the medical field and specifically as a physician. And then I remember in junior high and high school, my mom used to work at a hospital by the name of St. Francis Hospital. This is an old hospital out there by the beach. It's no longer there. And then she worked at Miami Heart Institute, which is a very large cardiac institution.
Is your mom?
My mother, yeah.
Wow.
She unfortunately she passed away 14 years, but she was extremely instrumental in pushing and you know, subliminally always parents tend to, if you see that your child likes a certain thing, like if they can see that you know, have a daughter who may be a pianist in the future, I kind of start saying, well, let me take you to rehearsals. Let me take you, kind of subliminally pushing you that way because your parents realize, you know, what your gifts are.
And you
early
also
on.
said that, you know, early on, you also had like a calling almost.
I had a calling, so they knew that.
So they were helping you guide.
So they're
they
helping me,
weren't
so-
forcing that upon you.
I think the worst thing you can do for any children is force them. Subliminally, if they like something, just help them and steer them that way. So she worked at Miami Heart Institute and St. Francis Hospital, so I started doing volunteering work during the summertime. And I would volunteer summer times as a junior high. I remember I started in the medical library where I was always a responsible kid. And from there, you know, I started volunteering in the ER. But really where everything came together was I started volunteering at Miami Heart Institute. And I used to volunteer in the cardiac cath lab.
Wow.
And I'll never, this always, it's like if I was looking at this memory and it happened yesterday. I remember an older lady dead, walking in, they pushed her in, they were doing CPR. And I remember one of the fathers of interventional cardiology, specifically here in South Florida, Dr. Jim Margolis, doing CPR, getting this lady inside and doing a cardiac catheterization. Apparently her heart arteries, and I'll explain what a cardiac catheterization is in a little while, but her heart arteries were occluded. He was able to open up these arteries and establish blood flow into the heart, and the heart started pumping once again. And, you know, the lady obviously was intubated. She was in a respirator, and they transferred her to an intensive care unit. And as a 14, 15-year-old young adult, I was curious. I said, well, this person was dead, but she walked out. I mean, she was taken to an ICU. So I went every day to see her, and within a week, she came back within 2 or 3 days mentally. They took her off the respirator, the ventilator, as we call it in the medical world, and she was discharged a week later.
Wow.
And I said, this is miraculous. And I said, I can't believe this. You know,
Wow.
you know, a team can do that, but most importantly, that doc did it.
Yeah.
So I started rounding with other cardiologists. I said, yeah, this is what I really want to do. It was a long road. It's been a long road. It's never been a straight path. And I think for anyone who's trying to reach their goal, usually there's serpentinous roads that don't always lead in a straight way to your goal.
Yeah.
You know, and many times there's luck involved. And many times you have to position yourself in the right place at the right time. Sometimes it works for you and sometimes it doesn't. And in the moments where you feel it hasn't worked or it's not going to work for you, all of a sudden, like this little, you know, in a little light, like in the movies, you know, I always remember these old Christmas, you know, I remember Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, how a little light comes out all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden a magician comes out, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's always that divine help. I'm very spiritual. I believe in God strongly. And
what do you think you would recommend to somebody? Because I personally know a lot of people that, you know, they're already in the medical, you know, they're studying medicine. It gets like very, very difficult in terms of, you know, that studying in college. What What would you say to,
Look,
to students?
to start off, you have to have direction. You have to know that you want to be a physician. I remember my first day in college, in university. It was like about 300 of us in the first class of biology. By the first exam, about 2/3 of them had dropped out because it's tough. It's an endurance test.
Wow.
This is an endurance test. You have to have intelligence. You have to be a person who is adept to reading, to being able to do well in school, be a person. But most importantly, you have to be extremely responsible and very applied to what you want to do. You need to, I remember instead of going out and having parties and going out and enjoying myself on weekends with friends, I would have to stay at home and study. That was through college, through medical school, even through residency, because I did, just to tell you briefly, I did about 17 years worth of schooling between college, medical school,
wow,
residency program, fellowship. I became a cardiologist at 34, interventional cardiologist at 34.
Wow.
And I didn't take any years off. So because the training is long and arduous, it's an endurance test. I call it medical boot camp. You're always under duress. You're always being pushed by your superiors, your teachers. It's boot camp. It's kind of like that drill sergeant that jumps on top of you. That's who our teachers were.
Do you think it's intentional, or do you think it's just there's so much to learn?
I don't think it's intentional. I think sometimes because of the stress factors involved, personalities change along time, and many times our professors, they don't have the patience, and sometimes some do. A lot of them, I have great professors who I can tell they're great mentors, but human nature is, if you're under a lot of duress, you're eventually not going to be all happy about everything in your world, and sometimes teaching is important. I had a professor, I'll never forget. He would tell me, the only way you, and as a fellow, I was already a doctor, a cardiology fellow. The only way you guys learn is through fear. So that's many times that's the way people get to you, especially at our level.
And are you scared of what you do in terms of like today or last night? You told me. You told me, hey, I'm gonna be a little late to the podcast. I have a procedure, and there's other guests that tell me the same thing, but it's because they have to go to pick up their kids at school or baseball practice, and then here you are. Doing a heart procedure on somebody, so I forgive you, But it's like, how do you, when that person's on the table, because you can love it when you're 6 or 7 years old and your dad can do whatever he did, and then your mom, and then the school, but a lot of it has to do when that person's on the table, like your hand can't shake,
Yeah.
What do you think is what makes you, superior cardiologist and surgeon in this field? And are you scared? Like, do you ever, when did that fear leave you?
So the fear deep down inside, and I'm wise enough to say this, will always be there. The question is if you can face it, suppress it, and move forward despite of it. What I do isn't an easy task. I have, today in itself, early this morning, I told you I might not be able to make it here on time. I was taking care of a fellow physician who had a 99% blockage in one of his arteries. And I remember in the midst of the procedure, usually I do it a certain way, but this time around, I can tell you easily I've done maybe 35,000 procedures in my lifetime. And I've been doing this for 17 years. Wow. I literally stepped back and said, no, I'm not going to do it this way this time, because I have a feeling, it's an instinct and it's an intuition that you say, no, I'm going to go a certain way. So luckily everything came out great. He was happy. He was very appreciative. I've done a couple of procedures on him, and luckily this time, the fear is always there. Because when something happens, you have to have, I always I always coin a phrase, and it's from, I'm a big music fan. I'm a big rock and roll fan. I'm a big Rush fan. That's my favorite band. And they have an album called Grace Under Pressure. And every time I look at that album, I say that I'm going to apply that phrase to me, what I have to do. You need to have grace under pressure. I've had patients who've died on me, and I've had to bring them back. I've had patients who arrive with heart attacks where their heart is not beating, like when I was a 14-year-old kid that I saw that older lady walk in, and we've had to shock them up to 80 times to bring them back, and they've come back. In those types of situations, we're trained to perform these procedures. But back inside your heart and inside the back of your brain, there's a fear factor that you might lose that person. And for all the people you've taken care of, the person that you lose, that's someone you always remember down the line. And you have to carry that burden, because even though you try your best, you still feel, I wasn't good enough to bring them back, even though that's not the case. You're not God. You at the end of the day, there's always one divine soul that is looking over everything. But for me, being a perfectionist at what I try to do, it's tough. So,
do you think that's one of the reasons why you have such? Because, speaking to, I had a high cholesterol a couple months ago, and you're already like trying to, change everything, what we're eating. And do you think that your experience and seeing what can happen to the heart is why you have such a heart and, pun intended, for making sure that people, really take care of their heart and are, proactive in their approach, to healthy living so that they can, live a long life?
Yeah, I do believe in the whole essence of small steps, and building on small steps really prevents large tragedies. And, taking care of your cholesterol, certain things that we've studied, cholesterol, your blood pressure, if you're a diabetic, try to lower your glucose, try to exercise, try to eat healthier. I'm not a purist. I do believe ever so often you have to have your what you like the most, because then it's going to be very difficult. Now, there's small steps that we all have to take daily in order to be able to prevent tragedies from occurring. Tragedies being heart attacks, strokes,
So what do you think somebody can do, especially in the city that we're in, where it's very fast paced, where you're going from one meeting to another. Maybe you get a quick snack, maybe it's fast food, or we eat out. I'm always eating out with like clients, so it's very processed food. What do you think that, you would recommend for people in our city, in our county, to say, look, this is what we should probably try to focus on, like you said, small steps, so that we can essentially never have to, ever go see you,
One of the most underrated things that many of us don't do is what he's doing right now. Well, actually not with the coffee, but drink a lot of water. Let's start with water, heavy hydration. A lot of hydration usually improves your well-being. Secondly, try to eat healthier, more vegetables, more salads. Try to eat fish, primarily chicken, meat maybe once a week. You do need meat. You do need iron, and just try to follow many times what we call the Mediterranean diet, which helps out. It's a lot of fruits and grains, and try to exercise. And that's all. And
a lot of aguacate.
Aguacate is good in certain amounts. Remember, everything in moderation. Now, that's the physical part, and then you have the psychological, mental part. If you're under duress all the time, you're under stress, if all you're worried about is working, if you're, if you have what, like we used to call type A personality, where you're flustered by any small little detail, that usually is going to affect your cardiovascular system. Okay, so you have to try to be in harmony with I don't want to feel like booed or anything like that, but or preach something like that, but you do have to be in harmony with your surroundings, both physically, mentally, and psychologically, and emotionally too, because the emotional stress that we all carry on ourselves really has been shown to worsen cardiac and cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
So you have to try to find that balance.
No, there's a lot of studies coming out, my doctor posted something yesterday on Instagram saying that, people who even smoke marijuana, that they're 25% more likely to have heart failure and stroke,
Yeah, just the inhalation of smoke in itself, I mean, some of, marijuana, I've gone on many podcasts and radio shows about the whole incidence of vaping. People get off cigarettes to vape, but vape, the problem is anything that you're inspiring into your lungs is going to destroy the lining of your lungs. You're not going to be able to breathe, and it causes what's called fibrosis, where down the line you can breathe in, but you can't get the oxygen into your bloodstream because there's a lot of scar tissue not allowing that blood to diffuse into your bloodstream. So anything you inhale like that is definitely destructive. And marijuana is they've shown the increase in cardiac disease with marijuana and multiple other factors, other situations that occur with marijuana,
Yeah, I wasn't worrying about my heart until my cholesterol was, through the roof. And it's crazy how just working out, I started drinking more water. I stopped eating red meat.
Yep.
And immediately that, and I didn't have to be, I think we were on medicine for maybe a month just to kind of help it.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the medicine part of treating, let's say cholesterol, or how do you feel about that?
The medicine, no, I think the medicine, there's a lot of studies that especially in the cardiovascular, where I think cardiology is the most studied specialty in medicine, where really medications have shown a difference. Heart disease is still the number one killer in the world and in the United States. But the incidences of heart disease and deaths and fatalities from the 1970s till now has dropped dramatically. Okay, so and that's been because of different treatments. To start using aspirin, to start using medications like beta blockers, to start using medications like statins, like rosuvastatin or atorvastatin. That decreases cardiovascular risk.
And technology, I would say.
And technology, so you can try with all your factors to decrease your risk factor, but sometimes there's critical genetics. I've had patients brothers have had heart attacks in their 40s. I've taken them to do catheterizations and their arteries are blocked out. These people are ready to have heart attacks. That's why we exist. That's why we're on board, to prevent that. And we've been able to avoid many of these fatalities. And whenever I look at these people, I look at their families. I'll never forget, about 6 months ago, I would say, there was this one gentleman, 52 years of age, and he looked at me, and I did a stress test on him, and I go, you have an abnormal stress test. He goes, oh, I have some shortness of breath, some pressure here and there, but no big deal. He was in the construction world. Oh. And I kind of looked at him, and he had a 7-year-old little daughter. So he didn't want to go on board. I go, I think we should take you to do a catheterization. And for people who don't know what catheterization is, it's basically we kind of get an IV like in one of your arteries and go up and take pictures of your heart arteries and live X-ray. And there we're able to see whether your arteries are blocked off. These arteries are so important because they give blood to the heart muscle. The heart is a muscle. It's the pump of the body. If this heart pump isn't receiving the blood adequately, it won't be able to pump blood to the rest of the body, and these organs have no blood to getting to them, and they start dying off. The brain, the liver, everything.
Everything starts at the heart.
So those arteries, which are so small, really mean everything, because if the heart is pumping blood well, that means blood's getting to all the organs, which means that your body in whole is working the way it should be.
Yeah.
So I take this gentleman to the cardiac catheterization lab, and I take my first pictures, and I say, how is this gentleman walking around? He had a blockage in one of the main arteries, the left artery, 99% blockage. It's in old times, we used to call this artery the widowmaker, because a lot of young men in their 40s and 50s would drop dead, and the widows would stay behind, the widowmaker. So...
And it was blocked.
It was blocked. I was able to luckily put a stent. We opened up the blockage. I stopped, and
how did that make you feel?
I shed a tear.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I looked at him, and I looked at his little daughter. I said, that little daughter's going to have his father. her father for a while. As long as I'm on watch, I'm going to try to make sure that father's around. He was very appreciative, nice guy, great people. The majority of my patients, I can tell you, are great people. I obviously have my office in Hialeah. It's a more Hispanic-based population, but we see patients from all walks of life, from up north to South America to I have a large Asian population and a lot of European population. So, but this gentleman was from Cuban descent, kind of like me, and it made a difference that little 7-year-old wasn't gonna stay.
He doesn't have a dad for a while.
Yeah.
And your practice, you mentioned your practice. From what I saw, and what I see now, your practice runs. You have a great practice. A lot of people. Every time I go there, the line is like out the door, literally. Yes. Yeah. Why the ASC? Why the ambulatory surgical center? Where did that even come about? What drove you to want to do an ambulatory surgical center? Because, like you were saying, it's been a very long road, not only in your career, but to get the permit and the whole construction has been very challenging. What made you say, hey, it's going to be worth, the struggle?
In my career, I've had 3 stages, and I'm very proud of myself because I've had to reinvent myself multiple times. And I know that this kind of could resonate home to many people who are watching right now. Sometimes in your career, you have to kind of switch gears or switch the way you walk in a certain path. And, when I first started as a cardiologist, basically I was in a hospital working my tail off, seeing patients in the office. I was going to 4 hospitals. I had a ton of patients. I was rounding for many hours, 18 hours.
This was before your practice?
This was once I became a cardiologist.
Okay.
I was working sometimes 18 hours. I remember waking up at 6 in the morning, getting home at 2 in the morning. That's what some doctors do. A lot of doctors, especially in the intensive care area, or people who are vital, and to the community when it comes to from a medical standpoint. So I remember on a Friday night, I had a lot of patients to do in a cardiac catheterization lab. And I remember, I was hoping to get out by 7 o'clock to spend time with my family, with my children. And emergencies kept on cropping up. And I said, I'm not going to be able to finish it. I ended up getting out at almost midnight. And I said to myself, there has to be something else here. There has to be something that I'm doing wrong, and I kind of started looking within myself. I said, what is it that I can improve in efficiency? I can see my patients in an atmosphere where I can create the atmosphere to who I am, what I'm about, what I stand for. And that vision that I had when I was 6 years old, to help people, to make them feel comfortable, not only from a medical standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint. So I started looking within myself. I remember I was at a medical office building, and I said, this isn't going to cut it. So I started driving up 49th Street, and I found a place. It was a deserted, what you're seeing now is nothing. It's nothing. It was full of termites.
I see the Google images before.
It was an abandoned, it was on foreclosure. So I said, I'm going to buy this property. So I was able to purchase this property, I indebted myself significantly, and I had to gut it out and reconstruct it. Mm-hmm. We reconstructed it. We made it first the Vascardio Heart and Vascular Institute. There, I was able to morph not only to doing my cardiac catheterization, but I was able to train or retrain into the peripheral arterial world, where I take care of leg arteries and leg veins. Because it is part of the cardiovascular world, but many cardiologists really don't address that issue. And it's the most underdiagnosed and underestimated issue, I would say, here in South Florida.
Wow.
And I'll get to that in a little while. So I realized that we can do certain procedures in our center. And we went ahead and started doing these procedures. And I slowly but surely, I even started getting more patients because more people were worried about not only the cardiovascular health, but it's funny enough, I brought people from being dead to coming back to life. And there's one crazy story which I remember, which I'll tell you now. But when you take care of people's legs, if they've been smokers and diabetics and they've had hypertension and they're older and they can't walk, that means so much more than you taking care of their heart. Because their heart obviously is one of the most important organs after the brain. But they don't really feel or see their heart. Either they're alive or they're not with their heart.
But they see their legs.
But when they walk, they feel the pain.
Yeah.
And when they're at home in
Is that
bed,
when their legs are all kind of like, you see, like kind of bumpy?
they
and
sell swollen legs because of venous disease. They have blocked off arteries where blood can't get down to their feet. So when they walk, they have cramping pain. It's, kind of remember when you were a child that used to run a lot and you used to get cramps in your legs? Yeah. That's what they're getting at a slow motion rate. In other words, they're walking slowly and they're getting these cramping and pain sensations. So we started doing these procedures in our center. This was 6 years ago.
Wow.
We've done almost over 4,000 procedures in the last 6 years. And the difference we've made in the community of Hialeah has been noticed to the point where we've gotten international patients. We're getting patients from other parts of town. We're getting patients from northern part of the United States where they've heard about me. I even got a patient from California there. They calling me. He wanted to come and see me. And that's not for us to just toot our horn. That's what's been going on when you try to take care of these people in the right way, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically.
No, I imagine you're doing an incredible job because, first of all, these patients are coming back.
No.
More patients are coming. Do you also feel that there's a big need for cardiologists in the city?
Oh, yeah, there's a shortage. I mean, I try to not allow patients who want to have appointments, have a long period between them calling and them seeing me. But I've heard around town that there's cardiologists that it takes them 3 months to see patients. That could be because of what they want as their workload, or B, because there aren't enough of us to go around.
Yeah.
There isn't enough because there's, let's face it, there's, out of 10 people who have illnesses, probably 7 of them have heart disease.
Wow.
So getting back to the building, I always found it difficult, and we all need hospitals. Hospitals are an essential part of our healthcare system. Yeah. But hospitals are sometimes very bureaucratic. Sometimes it's expensive. The wait time to undergo a procedure because there's multiple patients there is difficult. And there's a necessity. So there was certain laws passed in the past few years where we can do coronary cases. So I said, if we have a state-of-the-art cardiovascular center where it's safe, it's effective, you can bring in patients in a boutique fashion. And I want to say it that way because we're catering to them directly. We're bringing them directly. They don't have to go in through. They don't have to walk into a large hospital, which many times it's intimidating. It's intimidating. It's fearful. You see a lot of people walking around. You don't know. You hear people calling code blue, and you don't know that's going to be you the next time around. And we can do these procedures safely, effectively. We can send the patients home the same day.
Wow.
Then I think I'm willing to take a pioneer role in this type of situation. And that's how the surgical center sprouted up. And, my goal deep down inside is to make it a cardiovascular center. In Latin America, they have what's called policlínicos, which is clinics which address certain issues. You can have a gastroenterology clinic. You can have a rheumatology clinic. And I said, why can't we have a cardiovascular clinic? Obviously, performing procedures which are safe enough to be performed in a surgical center. We're not going to go become cavalier and start doing surgical interventions, cardiovascular surgery in a center where we don't have the appropriate backup. But being an interventional cardiologist for 17 years, when something goes wrong in the cath lab, I'm not waiting for the cardiovascular surgeon. The cardiovascular surgeon many times isn't even in the hospital. It's got to be me who takes care of the problem. So given that premise and given that, that idea, and one that I've lived many times, I said, we can do this.
Yeah.
And we can do this with a good team with trained cardiovascular nurses, technicians, and ancillary staff, which is important. We can do this. And it could be fruitful. It doesn't have to break the bank for the healthcare system. And I think this is the way we're going to go down the line.
Is it going to be cheaper for the insurance company?
It's going to be the reimbursement is going to be less for the insurance companies. And, first of all, the patient's going to be happy in their own environment because the
Especially that
surgical,
they know you.
they know me. They know the surgical center next door, or
They
the
know
clinics
security
next
guard,
door. They know the security guard. They know everybody walking in. So it's a win-win situation. And I see it as something revolutionary. I don't like saying that in Hialeah because, we're of Cuban descent. And whenever you say revolutionary, we have a problem. But in this situation, yes, I do believe it's revolutionary, so.
And how many cardiac ASCs are there right now within?
To my knowledge, there aren't very many, if any. I know there's some that are in other states.
Yeah, but not in this area.
But in South Florida, I don't know of anybody. There are some that are sprouting up now because they're seeing, and I completely support my colleagues who are trying to do that. I do believe this is the way to go.
So what procedures would you be doing in this surgical center compared to what you're doing now?
We would add on the possibility of being able to perform coronary angiograms and be able to place stents in heart arteries. We will be able to put pacemakers in patients who need pacemakers. I do believe down the line that eventually, there's certain cardiologists. For instance, I'm an interventional cardiologist, and you can, I can humbly say that I'm a glorified plumber because I unclog arteries. But then there's electricians in the heart world, which are electrophysiologists who deal with the electrical potential of the heart. Wow. And these procedures, I do believe in the future will likely be approved in a surgical center because they're safe enough in the hands of an experienced operator who knows what they're doing. And
they're monitored by the state.
They're monitored
by the exact same people.
We're monitored by the state, and it's the same people. It's just going to be a different venue, a different place, a more personalized place.
And are you excited for? Obviously, I know you're excited for us to finish the construction, but are you?
I'm excited. I'm really excited about the whole. It's a challenge.
Yeah, how's that gonna affect your day to day? How's it gonna affect your life?
Well,
because I also want to talk about, you said you've reinvented yourself 3 times. Are we in the 3rd time right now?
We're on the 3rd time now.
How long do you think that you would be in this, life of yours, this 3rd life, before you say, hey, because los años no pasan por gusto.
No pasan por gusto.
How are you preparing for, and mentoring others?
In these 3 phases, I've realized, when you're young, you just want to master your craft. Many times, as a man trying to reach the pinnacle of your career and the success, many times you lose track of the people that are around you. And what I mean by that is, I have, I'm divorced, and sometimes our family life takes a blow, and you aren't able to dedicate as much time to your children as you would have. I was always there for the important moments, but someone had to produce, someone had to go out and work, someone had to make their life easier. Yeah. And so the 2nd time I invented myself was a direct consequence of that. And I decided to stop going to hospitals only when I would do coronary cases. And I decided to concentrate on staying in my office and being able to do my procedures in my office for the simple fact that I had more control over my time. Mm-hmm. In a hospital setting, they were calling me at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and I had no life. And I realized it's unsustainable. And I was a solo practitioner I've been a solo practitioner for approximately 15 years.
Because you have no partners, no?
I used to have partners, but I realized that many times my partners, some of them wanted to work, others really didn't have that drive that I had. And I respected that. And many times we weren't on the same page. And sometimes they looked elsewhere to find other jobs that were a little bit more to the way they viewed life.
Yeah. Which is nothing wrong with it.
Which is nothing wrong with that. We're all different.
Yeah.
So
what gives you? Because I can relate to that a little bit, in terms of where like we're pushing it to the limit. You know, we have so much time here.
Oh yeah.
We're trying to really do as much as we can in the time that we are alive, and really trying to make an impact. Honestly, not only while we're alive, but while we have the energy to do it. You know, because like you said, you had a procedure in the morning in the hospital. You've been seeing patients all day. Did you have lunch today?
I had a little bit of salad, and I had maybe a meatball.
One meatball.
1.5. And I kept on rolling. I had tons of patients in the office. And I had told you, I'm gonna get here. I'll get here on time. But sometimes something's got to give.
You get to the Palmetto traffic. You know, it's very busy. You know, especially here in the traffic hour. And then you're hearing a podcast trying to be here. What do you think gives you that energy? Because me at 20 years from now, maybe I don't know if I would have that energy to really spend the long hours that you're spending right now. What do you think that comes from? How do you get that energy? I've been asked by many people in my life. I mean, what is it? What do you have in your motor? I don't have an answer for that. I believe that inside I have a stronger calling, and inside I have to make a certain difference, and inside I really, and this isn't, I know what you're gonna say. I really do care about the patients that I treat, and I really want to help these people, and I think I've done this for a reason. But it comes a point in life, I'm 50 now. So you start looking at yourself, and it's funny. In your 20s, you're immortal. In your 30s, you're still immortal. You take some hits, but you're immortal. In your 40s, you still have the strength and energy, and you have the big dreams. And as a physician, you're the 40s in the physician. That's like your time to.
You're complete because socially, you're finally caught up with your cohorts who were there in their early 30s because you weren't studying, you weren't locked up. Yeah. So you're out and about. You're able to pay off your bills. The majority of you do well in your career. But when you start hitting your late 40s and early 50s, you start looking over the horizon, and you start seeing the mortality of what life is really all about. You start seeing people around you getting cancer. You start seeing people having heart attacks and dying. And you start saying, well, I need to enjoy what's left. And it's not like you're 70 or 80 or, but with the amount of years and work that one's put into this, with the amount of radiation, because when I do these catheterizations, you get a lot of radiation, you kind of look at yourself and say, there is an expiration date. And as a physician, you know this well because you treat these patients every day. So you start looking and psychologically say to yourself, well, what's going to be the best fit for me? What is it going to be? What's going to be the best way of me managing my life? What's the best way of me spending time with my family, with my loved ones, being able to give them quality time? It's not only quantity, but quality. Because maybe I was there for my first 3 children. I would show up to the events or my kids' basketball game or or soccer game, my daughter's recitals. But was I there completely there?
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't, because I was worried about X patient having a heart attack. That was I able to do this correctly?
Yeah, the burden
that you have on your shoulders. So now you realize that you want to do things the proper way. You're revindicating yourself in certain areas where you haven't been able to prove yourself completely. And as an older physician, as a middle-aged physician, because I consider myself still young, and I still have a lot of vibrancy and energy, but you try to do things in a certain way where you're going to be able to reach as many people as you can, but be able to conserve that energy.
Right. Do you feel that physicians have they hold physicians to a double standard in terms of like the work-life balance, where you have somebody that say maybe is a teacher, or maybe that's somebody that's a firefighter, or somebody that's, just, a lay person that just has a normal job. Even me, but you as a physician, somebody that really prevents, heart failure, somebody that really prevents people from dying. Do you think that you are put in a position where people really kind of don't care about your personal life because you essentially have to save their life, because I just feeling, the burden that you share and knowing a little bit about you, I feel that sometimes it's almost like, not that people don't care, because they do, but it's like a cross that you carry.
Well put. And I think that's a wonderful question, Oscar. As physicians, we are looked at as the last bearer or the last gatekeeper before you go on to the other side. Mm. And especially in the cardiovascular world, when things can change from one minute to the next, and families can have sorrow over their loved ones passing. Many times, certain interventions that we do can at least withhold that moment. We're all going to die. We all know we're going to die, but if we can, some of us try to push that envelope and push those years fruitfully, Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we are human beings, but we're seen as machines. And physicians. And many times, and I don't think it's done in a negative way or in a malintent way.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's part of, you have your lifeline, and you expect that lifeline to always be there.
Yeah.
I've been on vacations in Europe, and I've been called by patients having heart attacks. Oh, but why aren't you here? I go, because I'm a human being, and I need to take vacation. If not, I'm not going to be able to take care of all of you guys. It's a lot of burden. So there's even discrimination amongst other physicians. Like when one physician, I've myself been frowned upon because I've gone into my clinic and I've been doing procedures in my center, whereas there's other doctors who are in the hospital and they're still maintaining their lifestyle of basically slavery. And, it's a difficult double standard because we are human.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you realize that I'm not God. I'm just someone who is here to help and to hopefully treat you, and hopefully I can help save your life. But I'm a human being. And when you start having situations in your family life that affect you, start realizing, wait, I have to sometimes detach. It's it's a normal, natural human response. You need to start detaching a little bit because you get really close. I have a sister who, if I consider myself a good physician, I consider her an exceptional physician. And she really gets involved with all her patients and her families. But I see it affect her.
Yeah.
To the point where I've told her, you need to step away a little bit. I get it. We both come from the same tree. We care about what we want to do. We want to help everybody out. We want this person to feel better. We want the family members to all be happy. But at what point do we kind of differentiate ourselves and step away a little bit and say, wait, you need to take care of yourself. So funny enough, I'm, in an airplane, when they say something goes wrong, usually, the oxygen masks come down.
Yeah.
And if you're with a child or with somebody else who can't put on their oxygen mask, they tell you, you need to take care of yourself first. Put on the oxygen mask, and then you can put on the oxygen mask for the child you have next to you and whoever can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think this is the most important principle to apply. You need to take care of yourself. A lot of us as physicians are selfless. We tend to treat and take care of everybody else, and the last ones we take care of us is ourselves.
Yeah, even like as leaders and as husbands, as men, because I can relate to that. Where we can really, carry that burden in a different way.
And sometimes it's not fair to really, this day and age where mental health is extremely important. I have a lot of colleagues who've gone through many depressions, who've gone through anxiety attacks. A lot of people resorted to drug usage, to alcohol usage, And the important thing here is to say, first of all, I sometimes need to step away from the problem. For that's why vacations exist. Before, I never took vacations. I would take maybe a week and a half. I couldn't. I had no coverage, so who was going to see my patients when I was away?
Yeah.
But morphing into my clinic, I was able to have control of my schedule and be able to take mini vacations. And, now...
So what do you do for fun other than...
I like traveling.
Yeah.
I love traveling.
You said you like concerts?
I'm a musician. I play the trumpet. I play the saxophone.
Yeah.
I'm not the greatest, but I dabble in it. I love going to music concerts. I love traveling. I love, I have a lot of places where I still want to go, but I've traveled a large part of the world. And I think there's nothing better than knowing different cultures. I think here in our bubble here in Miami, sometimes we lack that because we think this is the epicenter of the world, and when reality, and that can go for the United States as well, where you have to go out and explore different realms, different cultures, and realize that
there's more to life than work.
We have a great gig, if you want to take it into a musical standpoint. We have a great gig here in the United States, but there's other places in the world that have great gigs too, and we can really take a lot from their philosophy, their way of looking at life, and the way they live life.
No, I go on vacation sometimes, and when I get, if I leave for a week, 2 weeks, when I get back, it really puts in perspective, how bad of a life we really live, and how, it's not normal how, all we do is work. It's just, work to pay our bills. We hardly see our families. I wish I wish it was different, I wish that we lived in a community where, or in a place where it was less, volatile,
Yeah.
But then I leave, and then you're also, itching for that craziness because you've also become accustomed to Miami and the pressure that it has, the speed at which it goes. I also love that too. I just wish that there was more balance,
Yeah.
And I think for me, and also, for you, I was thinking about sometimes when you lead an organization and when people, look up to you, they almost stop feeling bad for you sometimes, and they lose this remorse, you go to if me and you right now were to go to La Carreta at 11 o'clock at night and we see the poor lady, barriendo el piso, cleaning the floor, you're going to feel bad for her,
Of course.
But if me and you right now are in a hospital and a heart surgeon walks in at 11 o'clock, I don't really think that they're going to feel bad for that person.
They don't.
And it's such a double standard because, you're a person too. You have family, you're a dad, you're, you're so many things to so many people. And I think that sometimes, money, not only changes the person, but it also changes the way that people perceive that person. And I think that's something that I really admire about you and your practice and the way that you go about things. You know, I see you on Facebook and you're posting pictures with your kids. You're going to,
Right.
you know, concerts and games, because I think in this third life that you're in, I think you have realized like you know, their life is also important, but my life and my relationship with my family and my kids is honestly is equally as important, you know. And I think that's something that I imagine it's kind of hard to balance. Do you ever feel guilty, you know, I don't know, going on vacation or going to this?
You know, I used to when I was in my 30s.
Because I do, you know.
Yeah. Well, you won't, trust me, the older you get.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to get there, because right now I go somewhere and I feel guilty.
Yeah, so, you know, I always look at life in this way. You have we were born into this world. We don't really have a game plan in check. Our experiences, our tragedies, really start molding and letting us know what we don't like and what we do like. And what we do like, we start kind of gravitating towards the positivity of what we do like, you know, and that part of life.
Sometimes it just takes too long.
Sometimes it takes too long. Luckily, I can tell you that, you know, I've had revelations in the last couple of years, which have opened up my eyes for a very long time. You know, it was kind of like you were just in a train. Like I always look at the Midnight Express, or, you know, that train, or any European Express, where you're kind of just going at a speed and there's no way you can stop until certain situations in your life hit you and you say, well, here I am. And then there's time for self-exploration. And you look at yourself and you say, wait, I'm doing this. I don't think I'm doing this right. And you know, sometimes there's divine interventions. Certain things happen in your life which make you go a certain path, and you realize, wow, this is the right path. And I wasn't supposed to go here. I was supposed to go this way, but somehow, some way, something fractured that path and pushed me to the other way. And that was the right way.
And the right way, you have like peace.
So I had a friend of mine once, I'll never forget, you know, like I told you, it's been a long serpentinous, a long road, a snake-like road, adventure for me to get to this point. I'll never forget, in one of the most important parts, you know, I lived outside the country. I lived in Dominican Republic, where I studied medicine, and I lived in Puerto Rico, where I did my residency. And I remember my first year where I applied for cardiology. I didn't get in. I did get in, but it was a political thing, and they shifted around the decision-making, and I was the odd man out. What did I do? I ended up doing research, and I was a chief resident on my internal medicine residency program. And I remember the first day starting that internal medicine residency program, I had a colleague of mine that I haven't spoken to in a very long time, but I always appreciate for what he told me. He told me, look, he was a little older than me. He told me, when things happen, don't swim against the current. Continue with the current, that eventually there's going to be a stop-off, which is going to be better for you. So kind of taking that idea and kind of fixating it on different situations in my life, I think it holds true.
Yeah.
You know, there's been certain areas where you say, wow, it's really, things are really bad now, but eventually it had to happen for you to thrive and improve in your life, you know. So, and in response to your question, I don't feel guilty anymore going on vacation. I think it's only right for you to enjoy yourself. Yes, you need to work. Yes, we all need to have better lifestyles when it comes to an economic standpoint. But I think it's extremely important for you as a person to take care of yourself. And if what you like doing is going traveling, I have a friend of mine who he loves collecting plants and flowers, and that's his
what makes him happy?
Happy moment in life.
Like
you
Rush.
need to do that. You need to do that. You need to do that. You know.
So the question
because if you don't take care of yourself,
yeah,
you won't be able to take care of that wife, of those children. Those children will look at you differently down the line. And you'll have that guilt feeling inside where you say, well,
Then you really feel guilty.
Then you'll feel guilty. You'll try to re-vindicate yourself down the line.
Yeah.
The question here is trying to do it right the first time, not trying to do it, not failing multiple times in getting there.
And thankfully I've had a lot of good mentors in my life. I always say that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I've really tried, at least me personally, to learn, from my mistakes. In a previous podcast where I was interviewed by Roby Ramos, and he was talking about, do you have any regrets or anything like that? And I don't really have any regrets. I did have that snake-like approach in my career. Mm-hmm. I studied architecture for the at the beginning. The architecture, I liked it, but it wasn't something that I really, really loved. Then I went to civil engineering, and I liked it, but I also really didn't like it.
You weren't satisfied with it.
Yeah, I didn't have it.
It didn't fit your needs.
And then I went to a mentor of mine that, recently passed away. His name was Pedro. And he told me, he says, I've seen you in construction since you were a little kid. You've always been painting and very handy. And I think that you should go into construction management, And he was somebody that essentially told me, he didn't tell me the way that person told you, but he essentially told me you should start swimming with the current here.
Yep.
Because I think that, and at that point, I felt that I was really failing as a person, because I've always kind of been brought up, especially around, my brothers and sisters, my parents, like I want to do the best I can at a very early age, especially the fact that I have all the opportunities that my parents didn't have, So there's no excuse to fail in terms of not making it. And I really was really, really focused at a very, very early age to make it, to making it has always been, and I don't, now growing up, I don't know what that means, but at that early age, it was maybe to graduate and to maybe get a good job and a wife and, the
conventional the conventional plan for anybody, any man.
And I really, and when that person told me, hey, I think you should study construction management, I felt like I felt like I had stopped, like in the creek, and I had gotten wow, this is exactly where I want to be. And I think a lot of people fight it, they fight this, and there's always an urgency. I was also talking to Roby, and he's an actor. He's an actor on HBO and an actor on Stars. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that one of the first things he did, he took, his first, college classes. He took an acting class, he took a philosophy class, and he took all these classes and to figure out what he wanted to do. And I feel like sometimes people don't give themselves an opportunity to figure it out, because sometimes they don't know at 6-7 years old what they want to do. And it wasn't until that first acting class that he got the part, and he's like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it's incredible how everybody has their path, and it's important that you just you can't just go with the flow either, because I'm the opposite of a go with the flow type of guy. Right. But God also has a plan for your life, and He also wants something for you. And you see that the more that you kind of go against God's will, you will see that the more difficult your life would be. So I can really resonate with that, because how did your life, if you would have gone accepted into that residency, you think you would be where you are right now?
No, I if I would have gotten accepted into that fellowship in Puerto Rico, my life would probably have been different. There wouldn't have been as many challenges. But I always look at life as a digression of paths. You can take one path and maybe you get a good outcome. You can take another path and maybe get a good outcome. It's kind of like the whole story of many roads lead to Rome, But that was a path that was chosen for me. Luckily the following year I was accepted at Mount Sinai here, and I was able to do interventional. And then, from a professional standpoint, my career really took off, and at a more recognized institution. But definitely, you can only realize that when you're looking back in life.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the midst of the battle, it's very hard to act and react. Very few people have that God-given ability to say, well, this is the wisest way of going, and let me go through here.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's many experiences that push you a certain way, and luckily those experiences push you a certain way. I was lucky, as I told you, at 6, 7 years of age, that I knew I wanted to be a physician. Although there was also a small inkling inside of myself, I wish I would have been a musician. Because, you know, for me, music is everything. It's passion, it's emotion, it's what drives you. It's more passionate than
And it's
medicine
rock,
is.
mostly rock.
No, everything. I'm a
Everything.
jazz. I love jazz. I love jazz, and I love any type of music. You know, you name it. Any type of artistic music.
Your favorite is Rush, though.
I'm a big rock fan, but I'm a big jazz fan.
Yeah.
I love jazz. I love, you know, my favorite guitarist is a guitarist by the name of Norman Brown. He's a jazz, smooth jazz guitarist. Trumpet wise, my favorite trumpeters are Chris Bodie and Herb Alpert. Saxophonist Galto Barbieri is one of the classics, and you know, and I try to make it a point to go to these concerts to be able to absorb the energy, the vibration, and the music talent that these artists give. You know, and I can tell you I've gone as far as go to Italy to see a concert by Roger Waters, the bass player for Pink Floyd. I've gone to see a band by name of Jamiroquai, which I'm sure some people know, some people know. And I've gone to see artists like Chris Bodie, who's a great trumpeter who I've shared time with. Luckily, I've been able to meet him. And they're people who are gifted by God.
Yeah.
And they've been placed in this world like I have to be able to make this world a better place
Absolutely.
through their music. Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah, of course.
So what do you think would really separate you and, you know, pun intended, sets you apart in your industry as a person, you know, in the realm and, like you say, the world that you live in? What do you think that really sets you apart?
As a professional or as a human being in itself?
Both.
So I you know, they ask me, oh, how do you categorize yourself? Who are you? I go, first of all, I'm a human being. Second of all, I'm a human being that actually really cares about your fellow man. Third of all, I'm a human being that really cares about succeeding in his craft and what he does. I'm a human being who really looks after my family, who loves his family unconditionally. And when I mean unconditionally, you can love a family member, but you might not have that reciprocity from them. I consider myself a human being who has a certain essence within that is from times that occurred long time ago. I'm more a throwback. A lot of my friends call me the Renaissance man because I'm more of how was your past, what was your history, and then we'll go forward with the future. I'm first a human being, and I'm luckily a human being who can take care of people, who can save lives. And I'm a human being who has a lot of emotional intelligence and intuition. I think that's what differentiates me from the rest of my fellow people. And I'm here maybe hopefully to, whoever I try to come in contact with, I can try to bring a little bit of that spice that I have inside and hopefully help them out, make them feel better. You know, it's all about having a good time, enjoying yourselves. It's all about smiling. It's all about trying to feel better. You know what I mean? Because you know, I'm sure we're all going to agree here in this room. Is it really worth living if you're not going to be happy, tranquil, and at peace?
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
I understand.
You know, with all the stress and everything that's going on in this world, all these wars, all these people, you know, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of people can appreciate that, especially a lot of people I think that you can impact that might have, you know, they may not be in the third life like you said it, but maybe they're in that first life or second life, or somebody that's maybe studying medicine, somebody that's a business owner, somebody that is in the field, you know, that you've essentially you've gone through so much that I think that a lot of people can really resonate to your experience and the things that you know, because that's essentially why we've done this podcast.
Yeah.
We want to bring incredible guests on this show so that people can really understand, the community, and understand that there's other people out there that are experiencing the same heartaches, that are experiencing the same situations, and that are having the same, celebrations, but they also having, this is a real life, podcast. This is not, some influencer show that, paints a whatever picture. We want to just come, be real, be honest, and just say, this is who we are. This is what we've struggled. And man, if I can make you any better from the experiences and the struggles that I've gone through and who I am as a person, then that's exactly what we want to get out of. So,
it's funny. And before I wanted to kind of chime in, I was reading an article, and I'm a big Steely Dan fan, and Steely Dan had a song. I forgot what song. I think
you don't have no idea of any
I know.
names
There's
that you
an
told me,
old
right?
rock and roll band.
Okay. As long as you know.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Trust me. I'll when you're in the office, I'll just kind of put a couple of tapes on.
Okay.
You can listen. So this guy Steely Dan had a song called Deacon Blues. All right, and this song. It's about this. I don't really know the story behind the song, but I know that there was another artist by the name of Crosby, Still and Nash. Crosby, the guy from that band, which were very popular in the 60s and 70s. And he basically turned to Donald Fagen, who's the lead singer for Steely, and told him, thanks to this song, I didn't commit suicide.
Wow.
So you tell me, because that group made that song, and that other artist listened to that music, it stopped him, or at least it prevented him from
killing himself,
from a fatality. So what bigger influence can you have than me maybe able to speak to someone out there who maybe is going through the same problems, and I look at all these medical students and I just tell them two things. It's an endurance test. Try to enjoy yourself while you're in the midst of battle. It's hard to say that, but try to go out, try and enjoy yourself. Don't lock yourself up. I locked myself up for 10, 15 years studying. I don't recommend that to anybody, because what you don't live in your youth, you try to live later on in your life to compensate, and that usually screws things up. So try to live everything at your stage of life. If you're in high school, sometimes you have to go out and have a good time with your friends and get rowdy, and and do certain things you're not supposed to. But that many times leads to not being able to do those things later on in life, which likely are not appropriate at that moment. Especially if you have a family, or you have responsibilities, or
you lose that. You gain like fear of life, and you don't. I remember things I used to do, when I was teenager, that I would never do that. I would,
right.
Because, and even if I could do it, I lost the desire to do it. Now it makes for a good story.
Exactly.
But it's like every part of life has like its stage, and I always tell people, like, and my wife is really big into that, and trying to the people around her, like, you gotta have a good time, and you don't have to do. Sometimes people think that having a good time is doing bad things.
Yeah, exactly. No,
you can go enjoy
yourself.
Go to dinner and go with your friends. Like, there's so much to do. One thing that I really wanted to ask you. And I think we can end here, is if you were to speak to the people that are building this ASC, that are the construction workers, these people, they go in there on a daily basis, going through who knows what, and they've also, to them, it's very transactional as well. It's electricity is electricity, plumbing is plumbing, mechanical is mechanical. But when you put all these things together, eventually, very, very soon, someone's life is going to be saved in this facility that we're building. What do you think you can tell our team and our subcontractors? What do you think you can speak to them and let them know that in the midst of what doesn't look like anything is going to be something incredible, in a short while?
So it's funny enough you say that. Last Friday, I took a tour, and I might have broken the rules because I walked in with a couple of people. I know I'm not supposed to be back there, but I walked in with a couple of people to show the place because it was something very important. They're walking out, and I turned around, and I look at all your workers, and I tell them, I appreciate everything you folks are doing here. I don't consider myself what I do work. What you folks are doing here is real work. The construction, the putting up all these steel beams, getting up on a roof and risking your life every day, being able to, I've seen a lot of people fall and kill themselves.
Yeah.
And just to think that your hard labor and your dedication and your craftsmanship is going to lead to an institution and a structure which is able to be, which is going to harbor the possibility of people being treated and saved, and many, like I say, fatalities and deaths being prevented.
Yeah.
It's all a part of a group community effort. It's not only the doctor. The doctor is, it's kind of, you see those old Game of Thrones and the dragon show where it's the king and then it's just the king as a figure. No, and how about the whole court and then all the workers? There wouldn't be a king if there wasn't that pyramid.
Yeah.
So I tell them, thank you. You are part of this life-saving establishment. And, I tip my hat off to all of them. And I don't know if they told you. Last Friday, I sat with them. And
they tell me regularly that you're always, you're very thankful. Because to us, the same way that we're talking about, like, the surgeon goes into hospital 11 and nobody thinks anything of it. Sometimes we go into these buildings that we're building and people don't think of anything of it. We're paying you to do that.
Right.
But we take an incredible amount of pride, to really do work with quality, with excellence, ahead of schedule, and really exceed your expectations. That's, somebody asked me, what's the thing you're always trying to do? And I'm trying to exceed the expectation of our clients, so that, because you have an expectation in your mind, and then, we also sell ourselves, from the very beginning, that we're not that other contractor. So right off the get, you can't be that other contractor. So you have to be something superior, which to us is easy to do that because the recipe to do that is not very difficult. But, we really want to make sure that we cater to clients, but that, that you understand that when we're in there, we're not just putting up walls and we're just painting things, though we really love it. I was telling on one of the previous podcasts, sometimes I'm not worried to finish, but I would say 90% of the time, I'm sad to finish the job because, number one, I talk to our client a lot. Like, I talk to Odie,
of course.
She does an incredible job. And I'll be honest with you, me and you probably won't even be having this construction if it wasn't for the massive amount of labor that Odie's kind of put up. So
Odie's my office manager, my minister, and she's been instrumental. She's been our heart. She's been the heartbeat behind everything.
And then I'm scared that, like, am I not going to be? We're not going to talk anymore.
Oh,
like,
no.
So I know that's not the case.
We have other projects in mind in the future.
No, but even if we don't, we become family, and that's the culture we always want to have here. So we're very thankful to have you. We learned a lot about you, how you started medicine, your love for medicine. When did that start? How you've gotten this urge to really help the people, especially in Hialeah and throughout the county. And your love for music.
Oh, yeah.
And your appreciation for John Bell. So we really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing all of that. And I'm sure that there's somebody out there that is going to really benefit from your experience and this podcast. So we appreciate you being on the podcast. We're going to continue to have incredible guests like Dr. Dieguez that are going to tell us a little bit more about their life, about the real-time struggle of what it is to live in Miami, the experiences they've gone through, the successes they had. And this is just going to be a show where it's just real-life events, real-life conversations, where we pull the curtain back and we can allow you to know who we are as a company, as family, as friends, and understand what our purpose here in the city, in this community is. So stay tuned for more.